It's been a tough time for me, guys. I do not understand the overall future and the overall health of college football at this point. We have another update. It says, spoke to a few sources who called USC and UCLA's move to the Big Ten a formality, with a press conference expected within the next 24 hours, perhaps as soon as tonight. So by the time this video is released, the press conference is probably already happening. The new members of the Big Ten, USC and UCLA, and there's a crazy theory going around. You know, the next question is, what happens? Does the Pac-12 die out? I think the most important question, if this gets announced and it's confirmed, what happens with Oregon? Because when Texas and Oklahoma left the Big 12, there were really no other major players in the Big 12. To me, Oregon is a legitimate player that would be getting quote-unquote left behind by UCLA and USC moving to the Big Ten Mega Conference. And take a look at this report. Here's another doozy, and this is just more stuff that is horrible for college football and makes no sense. It says, just got off the phone with someone who believes this eventually leads to two mega conferences. The Big Ten and SEC with 20 or more members apiece. What the actual hell? I don't understand the point. If you're having more than, how many games are we going to play? How many conference games are we going to play if we're having more than 20 members? This idea just makes literal no sense, and I understand it's based off of money, and really this whole thing started with the SEC doing something they never should have done. And it's not that I hate the SEC, I'm just saying the SEC already far and away had the best conference of college football. You poach the two best teams in the Big 12, that causes the Big 10 to react. And now it's even a weirder situation because at least Texas and Oklahoma geographically kind of aligned with the SEC at least a little bit. Now you've got two teams from California facing off against the team from New Jersey in quote-unquote conference play. Rutgers or UCLA traveling to Rutgers in November. That's a conference game now. Yeah, that's real legitimate. What's the point of conferences? I do not understand it. And everyone is wondering, everyone's asking, and especially me, what happens to Oregon? If this rumor is true to where both the SEC and the Big Ten are going to create mega conferences, I would imagine Oregon would also go to the Big Ten. And you would have Notre Dame going to the Big Ten as well. And who does the SEC grab at that point? Does the SEC try and grab Clemson? Does Clemson go to the Big Ten? It just becomes so weird. And there was an interesting thought. It says here, what will Notre Dame do? Will they move to the ACC and save the league so it can renegotiate its bad media rights deal? Or are Clemson, FSU, and other attractive ACC teams able to get out of the grant rights and move? So apparently, there's a big media deal that the ACC currently has that would prohibit from like Clemson, Florida State, from getting out and actually moving to the Big Ten or the SEC. If those two teams have 20-team super conferences, if they do have 20-team super conferences, I would also expect Washington to join the Big Ten. I think you would get the Big Four from the Pac-12 going to the Big Ten. You've already got UCLA and USC, and you would also add Oregon and Washington. As it stands right now, if I'm an Oregon fan, I'm in panic mode because the Pac-12, I wonder, does the Pac-12 just die out? Like, what happened? Like, the same thing with the Big 12. The Big 12 you lose your two best members and you replace it with mediocre, Cincinnati, not great teams. These conferences are just going to die out. It's going to be total domination by the Big Ten, who now will have USC, UCLA, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Michigan State. And the SEC, my God, Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Tennessee. These two conferences are just going to dominate college football. And then if we get to 20 teams, I don't understand the point of having conferences at that point. Why not just do it like free agency to where Ohio State can face Alabama one week, USC the next week, Iowa State the week after that? If you're having 20-team mega conferences, what sense does that make? Guys, I'm really struggling right now. I'm really struggling. I don't understand. This is not what college football was intended to be. College football is regional. You've got the Pac-12. It's balanced well enough. And if a conference is not very good, that conference simply won't make the playoff. Now, I understand the idea of the New Year's Six Bowls, people who are complaining that a Pac-12 team has to make the Rose Bowl, and it shouldn't be like that. And if you want to argue against that, that's fine. But, guys, this is just simply ridiculous, and this idea of a mega conference now. I think the big thing, what is Notre Dame's next step? Is Notre Dame's next step thinking about joining the Big Ten or thinking about joining the ACC? Which one is it? Because if they want to join the Big Ten, to me, the ACC dies out completely. The ACC does have a chance to remain relevant if they can get Notre Dame. If they get Notre Dame, they can remain relevant. If they can't, to me, they're pretty much irrelevant. The ACC was already a bad conference before this. Now, Miami is on the come-up. Miami's using NIL to recruit. They're getting some big names. But the ACC was already such a bad conference. Now you've got the SEC going from the number one conference in college football to even better. Now you've got the Big Ten going from the number two conference in college football and leveling up their conference. So I think the domino effect unfortunately started. It never should have happened last year. Oklahoma and Texas, the announcement happens. They're moving to the SEC for no reason other than money. And it completely destabilized college football, in my opinion. And this was the Big Ten's response to stay on par with the SEC. And I mean, now you've got teams from California facing teams from Pennsylvania in conference. I'm having a hard time understanding it. And there are a lot of teams out there whose future, if you're like Utah, what happens to Utah? Does Utah stay part of a crappy Pac-12? What if Oregon and Washington both end up leaving? Does Utah stay in the Pac-12 at that point? The main question is, do we go to two mega conferences, or is the ACC able to remain relevant? Because I think the Big 12 is dying out. It's going to become basically it's not going to be like a Power 6. The Big 12 is basically going to be a group of 5 when you compare it to how good the SEC and the Big 10 is. And the ACC is not far behind. The ACC needs Notre Dame. If they're not able to get Notre Dame, they're going to become virtually a group of 5. But it would really be like, I don't even know, because you have 2 major conferences, and then you've got 3 smaller conferences, and then you've got the group of 5. It's like there's 3 quadrants. You have the Big Ten and the SEC so far and away above everyone with these recent moves, if it happens as early as 2024. Then you've got the 3 conferences who have had teams poached. Well, the ACC hasn't had anyone poached, but the Pac-12 becomes significantly weaker. The Big 12 becomes significantly weaker, and the ACC. And then you've got the group of 5 conferences after that, led by the American. Although the American just got significantly weaker because 4 of their best teams went to the Big 12 because the Big 12 lost their 2 best teams to the SEC. Oh my God, what is going on? I don't know, guys. This is just, it's a sad day for college football in my eyes. It really is. And it's like we're going to do this thing where we eventually create such big mega leagues. They're going to start, I'm not saying they'll do this, but it's like they're going to create such big mega leagues. They're going to be like, all right, this is too much. Let's just divide them by region again. Like, we're going to go full circle. But it all has to do with revenue, TV money. The Big Ten's getting a new deal, and they want It's very attractive to have UCLA and USC in your conference when you're negotiating a new TV deal. It's very attractive to have Texas and Oklahoma in your conference when you want a bigger TV deal, when each member of the conference wants more revenue. Think of the revenue Rutgers is going to get now, the more money they'll get with their share of the TV deal because of USC and UCLA joining the Big Ten. This is how the business side of college football works. And now college football has multiple huge issues. The NIL booster cheating is out of control. Nobody's policing it. And now you've got two mega conferences forming, completely unbalanced when you look at the overall scope of college football. Two conferences so far and away better than everyone else. It's going to force your hand to expand to a 12-team playoff in the year 2025. That's guaranteed going to happen. Not even a question due to these mega conferences. I don't know, guys. This rumor that of this mega conference where the Big Ten and the SEC has 20 teams, who knows? We're going to have to see. It's still an evolving situation, but it is basically done according to Twitter, according to college football insiders. UCLA and USC will be members of the Big Ten starting in the year 2024. What that means, this year, 2022, the Big Ten will operate as it normally does. 2023, the Big Ten's going to have to think of how they want to do their schedule for 1 year. And then because the Big Ten took all their scheduling down because they were going to change it to a 3-5-5 scheduling format. Now it really doesn't matter if you're going to add UCLA and USC because you're going to have to change the schedule anyway. Then in 2024, USC and UCLA join the Big Ten and are playing conference games against Big Ten teams. So you have 2 more years without UCLA and USC. UCLA and USC will stay in the Pac-12 for the next 2 years and then move over in 2024 to the Big Ten. And then the college football playoff will be expanded to 12 teams in 2025. That is my working theory, just trying to think about this all off the top of my head right now. And you also have Texas and Oklahoma very likely joining the SEC in 2024 because they currently have a TV deal with the Big 12, and if they wanted to join the SEC in 2023, they would defer a ton of that money because they'd be leaving, and it would be a breach of their contract. They'd be leaving significantly early. They can get out of it in 2024 and only lose a little money, and obviously they're going to make more revenue by going from the Big 12 to the SEC just in general. That's why Texas did it. You think Texas, who's been losing games to Kansas, you think some of their players are like, yeah, let's go to the SEC. That'll be fun. I mean, no, it's all about money. That's why. College football, guys, it's in a bad spot right now. There's so many teams in flux. It's a developing situation. What happens to Notre Dame? What happens to the ACC? What happens to Oregon? What happens to the Pac-12? Does it die out? Does it become a sub-conference? Do we have 2 major power conferences and then 3 sub-conferences and then group of 5 conferences? Is that what the Pac-12 is going to be, a sub-conference? Is the Big 12 going to be a sub-conference? Is the ACC? The ACC is on the brink of total collapse. They need Notre Dame. They need Notre Dame. You still have Florida State right now. You still have Clemson. Apparently they have a terrible TV deal that some of those teams are trying to get out of. They can't get out of them right now. We'll have to see if they can get out. Maybe Clemson goes to the Big Ten. There's a lot of moving parts right now, guys. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.